Welcome everyone to Show and Tell, this month's Show and Tell, January 2021. We've got three terrific NEBA artists who are going to show us their work today and talk about themselves. And they will be Chantal Zakari, Mary Gillis, and Laura Blacklow in that order. And without further ado, I'm going to thank you for doing this now and start with Chantal. So you can work your own Zoom screen the way you would like and go for it.
I will be passing
Hi,
the screen
everybody.
off. Just one quick second.
Carolyn, I like the tiara. I think that's good MC material. I need to be able to
I'm in the middle of doing
share.
that right now.
Okay.
I lost your name here.
How's everybody doing? I see.
Okay, you should have that by now.
Okay, so let's see. I have a PowerPoint that I'm going to share, but I also have a connection to the actual publication.
Perfect.
So we could see both, but I thought first I could introduce you to the project. Well, first I should introduce myself. I'm Chantal Zakari. I am a professor of the practice at SMFA Tufts. I teach in the graphic arts area, but I do a lot of my own publication. A lot of them are self-published, although sometimes I also distribute with a major distributor. My work is on the web. I sell through my own page, but also through printed matter, mostly. I have done some handmade books, but primarily I publish my books and I publish them in multiples. Some of them are limited editions. Some of them are collaborative with my husband. This is The Turk and the Jew, the very first book that we made. Then this is Web Affairs. I'm just going to quickly introduce you to all of them so that you know what my background is and where I'm coming from. Ironically, my name was Show and Tell, and so I published Web Affairs as Show and Tell. So that was kind of like the funny thing about today's event. Web Affairs was a documentation. Oops, I'm sorry. Web Affairs is a documentation of people having sex on the internet, and this was really published in 2000, so 21 years ago. This is a documentation of Turkey and the Islamist movements in Turkey and the clash with the secularists. So this is another really thick project, really thick book. It took us about 10 years to do the research and publish. They Came to Baghdad is about the war in Iraq. Lockdown Archive is about the lockdown in Watertown. My husband and I live in Watertown, so these are all the images from that. And then this is a dos-a-dos book. So there is a front cover and another front cover in the back, so double-sided. It's campaign when we started an election campaign in our own town to stop Walmart from coming in, and then the billboard that we did in reaction to that. Strategic planning was about school administration and the business language that has entered school administration work. And then Drop Dead Gorgeous came out this summer, and it's about COVID and the imagery of COVID. The book or the publication I'm going to talk to you about today is Arsenal News. I have been researching, well, I live in Watertown, and if you are in the Boston area, then you would know that the Watertown Arsenal is in Watertown. So I have been working on this project for the past 5 years, researching the history and trying to figure out what is it that I would do as an artist and how I would intervene. I was very interested in the layering of history of the real estate, how this was a place where a lot of bombs were being made and cannons were being made, and yet now there is an art center, a theater, a movie theater, a shopping center, and all that change. So if you're not familiar about the space, I thought I would put in a Google map and show you the arsenal. Hold on, let me move this around. Literally starts at this end. Can you see my cursor? Okay.
Yes.
It starts at this end of North Beacon Street, or actually, I'm sorry, this is Arsenal Street. North Beacon is right here, and it ends over here. So it's a huge area that we're covering. The original set of buildings is right here. Most everybody don't even know how to get here because it's a residential area, but these are the original buildings. So here is an original or one of the older etchings of the time. And what you're looking at is this area right here. And it was really an arsenal, a way to store the ammunition. A lot of the stuff would go down south. The arsenal was very active during the Civil War. So it's a pretty old establishment. I was also very interested in these pictures in the archives that I was finding of the building effort that happened right before World War I and during World War I. So this construction that you see is this area here, which Home Depot is in. And then, of course, during World War I, it went beyond just producing ammunition, and they started building giant cannons, really, really giant cannons. And the last thing I wanted to show you actually about the history is this picture that I made using a drone, which is in the center of this area. There used to be a nuclear plant as well. And this nuclear plant now is gone and has been turned into this beautiful park where people can stop and relax. And I made a picture of it through the drone to show the lack of the building. So I don't know if any of you had a chance to see, but I had a solo show at Kingston Gallery in November. And this is a little bit what the layout of the show looks like. If you know the gallery, it's got a front room. So this is the front room. And then in the center gallery, I had 2 projections. And I'm not going to go into that work, but just to give you a sense that really I was thinking of a gallery space, and through that gallery space, distributing a free publication. That was the whole idea. And that's how this artist publication came about. So Arsenal News is a newspaper that was sitting here on the table, and you could pick up the newspaper for free and get a sense of the space, the arsenal itself. Another thing that I did during the show, and I'm probably going to continue doing this, is distributed them for free at the arsenal. So how many of you, although I can't see everybody, but raise your hands. I think I am going to be able to see all of you. Raise your hand if you know where the arsenal is. Yeah, okay, so maybe this is familiar for you, the location of this place. Okay, that's good. But here I am just giving out free Arsenal News during COVID. Probably not a very good idea. I did this only a few times. The significance, though, is that now you get to see the contemporary businesses in this place. And so it connects the past to the present, and me distributing these, the information about the old arsenal became even more poignant. Like when I go to SQZ Biotech, which is a research place, and the new businesses at the Arsenal. You see, Arsenal is not only a shopping mall. There is quite a lot of scientific research that happens above the mall on the second floor of these buildings. So I like that connection. But anyway, so here is my publication. I designed it very similar to the original Arsenal News. In fact, this is the headline or the masthead of the original Arsenal News. The original Arsenal News was a publication that ran for 23 years. And it was edited and written by the employees of the arsenal. And it was really for the workers. Quite a lot of interesting things has happened in the space in terms of the history of architecture, but the history of labor, and the history of technology, and the history of the army. So I was thinking of a publication that would layer all this stuff. And I also interviewed some people who had worked there. In fact, the quote on the cover here, "A bugle call for Reveille to begin and a lowering of the flag to end the workday," is from a couple, Lisa and Mark Tardif, who worked there in the mid 80s. And actually Lisa worked all the way till the mid 90s. Let's see. So it's a small publication, so I'm going to show you every page of it. But what you should be able to recognize is that the headlines don't necessarily match the imagery, because the imagery may be a different time period and the headlines a completely different time period. So I was interested in this layering of history in order to kind of draw your attention of the passing of time. I guess that would be a good way of thinking about it, but also the construction and the destruction of the real estate. This first page really focuses only on the real estate, and you can see how I labeled it up here as well. So Alexander Paris, these are kind of fake headlines, but not like fake news like Donald Trump's fake news. They're real news, just fake headlines, headlines that I would write. So Alexander Paris, some of you might know that eventually he went and designed Faneuil Hall and was the architect of Faneuil Hall, but the Arsenal was one of the earlier projects that he did. Juxtaposed with a photograph of 1917 where, they're getting ready to build the space, juxtaposed with a quote from Francis Drake, who said that he found in his research that Stockbridge tribe Indians were living in this area, juxtaposed with the commander's mansion, which was really a scandalous kind of history in terms of the amount of money that the commander Thomas Rodman spent, which is kind of sad because Thomas Rodman is known for the Rodman gun. And so he was very inventive as a commander, but then he lost his job because he built this, luxurious, at the time, it was considered luxurious mansion. Let's see, another thing that I did on this first spread, oh, I'm sorry, I am showing you here an example of what is on the wall in the gallery, which is again, the layering of these images that I would find in archives, along with my own photography. And sometimes my own photography is a drone photograph, like here, and sometimes I made actual photographs in the site. But here's a close-up from that first spread where I also give you a timeline. So there is a linear timeline, but the rest of the publication is all non-linear. Here is the second spread inside, and this is all about labor. One thing that's interesting, if you guys know about your history of labor, the Taylor system was first tested at the Arsenal. For those of you who don't know the Taylor system, it's a system developed by Frederick Taylor, where you would work in a line and everybody would have their own job to do in the production of one big machine. And also they would measure the efficiency of every laborer and how fast they work, and if they work better, in this position or in that position. It was a way of increasing production. And it's interesting to know that actually there was a huge strike at the Arsenal in 1911, where the workers walked out and they said, we don't like the system and we want to stop. And they did slow it down, but eventually, of course, the Taylor system became what a lot of factories were built around with. But there are interesting things here. Of course, these are things that are interesting to me. I looked at how Building 35, for example, was represented in the sharing of labor and the community and how they were seeing the community. Or in this case, how women were part of the labor. Or in this case, what they thought politicians were doing when in the 60s there was talk about closing the arsenal. Let's see, the center spread, oops, sorry. The center spread is this one. So this is a giant image that I have in the center of the newspaper that is cannon being tested. Eventually, these particular cannons, there is somebody in the waiting room. I'm getting, should I admit? I'll just admit. Okay, I don't know why I got the notification, but eventually these were the cannons that were used in World War II. Layered here with women boxing ammunition. This is from the Civil War time. But I am going to zoom in to this article because it's one of my favorites. Maybe I'll read it for you. Walter Zupayo died in action last month. Up until last fall, he was working in Building 35, a machine operator trainee. So far as we know now, he's the first of the Arsenal boys gone to fight this war who has met death in action. There are more than 1,000 Arsenal workers now in uniform. Many of them too will die. It's inevitable. It's only a question of time before they will be up at the front, and some of them, many of them, will never come back to their jobs or their families. We are too comfortable back here, too easily satisfied. Perhaps it's because the actual fighting is 3,000 miles or more away, or because we can't sometimes see clearly how all the little sacrifices we are asked to make tie up with a quicker end to the war. Everything from conserving gasoline to investing every dollar we can in war bonds plays a definite and necessary part in helping to win the war. The more we cooperate, the more we dig into the job that is to be done on the home front, the greater will be the number of these young Arsenal boys and others who will be coming home to their jobs and their families and the decent American way of living for which they are out there fighting.
Was this
I don't-
World War One?
World War II.
Two. Thank you.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but I love the writing and what I was reading in the Arsenal News. And so that's why I was so interested in using found text and their own text and their own language, is that I was seeing a different way of writing. Of course, this is 60 years ago, 70 years ago, but also I was seeing a different way of relating to war, a different way of relating to service, a different sense of community of working in this environment. So on one hand, and this is what I was trying to do also in my show, is that I think, now we look at this and we understand that the workers were producing an incredible amount of ammunition and object of destruction and violence. But in terms of jobs, these were really good jobs and really well-paying jobs, ways for the workers to move, especially for the immigrants, to move into the middle class and own some of the houses where I live in my neighborhood. This is where they were living. So I was very interested in that conflict and contrast of these good jobs, good paying jobs provided by the government, and yet the enormous destruction that they were creating through these jobs. Here's another spread. This one focuses on technology. And so here what you have is actually a collaboration with MIT. These are MIT students that are testing some kind of war communication system. And this is later in the 60s. So I think this is about in the 20s. That's in the 60s. These are not MIT students anymore. These are actual Arsenal workers. This is actually a curious thing that I found, is what happens to an idea. It was a way of collecting, everybody's ideas and inventing new ways of making things more efficient and better. In terms of the news, what I have is that the biotech startups are now moving into the same real estate. And this is finally when they closed in 1989. So I think I'm going to give you a close-up. There it is. This is what I found in the actual newspaper. What happens to an idea? Here is one that Charlie Wells' shop checker in Carriage Division had and developed. It won suggestion award of $25 for merely barrels of turning were loaded on elevators, brought to street floor and logged to big chip bin outdoors. Now they shoot it down. And so he came up with this idea of a shoot. And then it goes to a committee, and then eventually the commanding officer approves it. So that's also another kind of really power past a manager level in beauty. And Home Depot, they are supporters of Trump, but they did do something good, which is, this is very recent in 2020. The news was that Home Depot expanded their worker benefits and they took a bite out of their own profits. So that was good news. On the other hand, here is the nuclear reactor. They did not use this nuclear reactor to create bombs. They were really using it to test the metals that they were building to make high-end X-ray imagery, if you want to think about it that way, because they wanted to see if the metal that they were creating was pure and with no bubbles. And so they would make imagery, but nevertheless, it did create a lot of nuclear waste. And at some point in the late 90s, there was a super fund and all this had to be cleaned. And then finally, the last page is kind of like the back cover. I have a photograph from Gap. I have a lot of storage, but then another image of the community, which is they had the Arsenal baseball team, and another drone shot of the parking lots because there are so many parking lots today there. So I'm going to stop sharing. I can try sharing actually my iPhone. And see if I can connect. Give me a minute while I do this little technical connection here. Oops, sorry. In the meantime, if you have questions, I'm happy to entertain questions.
I'm going to just read off one of the questions here. Josette asked, who are the immigrants that settled? Were there specific areas that they came from, those immigrants?
Yeah, absolutely. I have an image that was in the show, actually. I don't think I have it in the publication, but obviously Watertown has a big Armenian community, and there were Syrians and Armenians, but a lot of the Armenians worked in the hood factory up the street. So they weren't necessarily working at the arsenal. But then there were a lot of Italians, Greeks, Irish, Indian, as in Indian descent, because at the time, you know, they called Indians both Native Americans and Indian descents, and there were some Native American descents that were there as well. What else did I find? Tons from European countries, a few Mexicans, but very, very few. So all over the place.
Great.
Yeah. Okay, so let me see. Are you guys able to see my phone right now?
No, we don't have that yet.
Okay, sorry. Let me try this again. And hopefully it'll work. And if not, I'll give up.
If you maybe stop screen sharing.
Mm-hmm.
There we go.
Now I stopped, right? Yes. Okay, so let's try this again. And are you able to see my phone? No. Okay, well, we'll give up on it. But what I was going to show you was, if you pin me, then you'll see me, but here's the newspaper. It's a regular newspaper, and this is how it opens, and it's about 12 pages, folds in half, black and white.
Where did
I
you get that printed?
Park Press in Saugus, Massachusetts. They print a lot of newspapers. It's a union-owned shop.
Great.
Local business.
What is their name again? The name
Park
again?
Press.
Okay.
Park Press.
Park Press. Great.
Any other questions? The story of World War II soldiers refers to whites. Yep, there were very, very black workers at the arsenal. This is, like I said, I'm not an anthropologist or a sociologist. I was looking at photographs in the archives, and I can assure you there were very, very, very few African Americans working. A historian would probably be able to tell you the reason and how that came about. My guess is because these immigrants were probably hiring each other and their friends and their family members. And so then it was a pretty closed community in that sense.
Great. Thank you so much.
Oh,
Thank you.
fascinating. Absolutely fascinating project. And as a graphic designer, beautifully designed.
Yes.
Oh my. Thank you. And I wanted to apologize for Americanizing your last name. Zachary?
Perfectly fine.
All right.
Do you have a scheduled date for the next time you're going to be handing out your newspapers, or is that just whenever you feel inspired to do so?
I like the randomness of it, because
Okay.
then, I don't know who I'm going to encounter. These days, I try to do it when it's not a very crowded day. I don't want to be there on a Saturday or a Sunday.
Yeah.
Frankly, I'm not really rushing, because I think when COVID is calmer, there will be more people willing to take it. And
Yeah.
but there has been funny encounters where some guy says, no, thank you, I'm all caught up with the Arsenal news. They're thinking about the current
Yeah.
news. And so, I like the randomness and the chance. I like the fact that I'm giving out something for free. That's really what I like the most. It's a gift to be able to give that, but I also like to imagine what somebody who doesn't really go to a gallery, because I think galleries, and I love having a show in a gallery, don't get me wrong, but as artists, we have created this very elitist space, right? And so a lot of regular people don't go to galleries. So I like the idea that I then take this visual piece and I give it to anybody who's willing to take it home. And hopefully they'll read it or they'll trash it. That's the other thing, is I don't know where it's going to end up.
Really fabulous.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thanks for
Well,
sharing
thanks.
that.
Thanks for the invite. I'm glad we were able to do it, because I usually teach on Thursday, so
Yes.
it's been sad to miss everybody else's presentation.
Well, we did have a survey that went out, right? NEBA.
And we're going to adjust for the fall. Yeah.
Yeah, great. All right. So more of these to come up. So
Yeah.
thanks, Chantal. Hey, Mary.
Oh, I'm here.
There you are. How about you want to start doing your presentation?
Sure, I think Christina is going to just spotlight me.
All right, very good.
Yeah, you're in speaker mode, so as soon as you start talking and everybody else is on mute, it should work out fine.
Will it? Okay, it's not showing. It's not being spotlighted on my screen. So
Not recording yet. Hold on.
Okay, we're recording. Are you seeing me my book spotlighted at this point? Because I'm not on my screen.
I'm not either.
Can you spotlight me, Christina?
It is spotlighted. We can see it.
Oh, okay. All right, the first book that I'm going to show is kind of where it all started for me, because in a color theory class years ago, I had done a series of 8 small paintings to illustrate the story of Moby Dick. We were supposed to illustrate a story, but be as abstract as possible, which means to me it needs to be a fairly familiar story. And so for a long time, I had these paintings, and I thought it would be good if I could either make a box or a book or something, but I didn't have a clue how. So then I took a class at BU. I guess this goes back about 6 years, and I did this for my final project. So I basically, after I finish showing the pages, I'll show the whole book. The covers of the book are wooden, and it's cut in the shape of a coffin, because the coffin is an important symbol in the book. And at one point, the harpooner uses the coffin that was made for him because he got better from being sick. He uses it as his sea chest. So on the right side of the picture, you can see his sea chest that I made with a little harpoon and his hammock and his little totem doll. So I'll show you, there's a little bit of text. This is a highly abridged version of Moby Dick, and I'm thrilled to know that there are 2 people who saw my book who are inspired to actually go and read the actual book. I have 8 paintings, and each painting has a chapter title and 1 sentence that goes with it. So it's super abridged. And a little bit of introductory material, an artist's note, and then a paragraph excerpted about the ship's carpenter making the coffin for Queequeg and what Queequeg did with it. And so there's the first painting, which is the chapel. In this same New Bedford, there stands a whaleman's chapel. This is the crew, the chapter going aboard. And this, of course, is Ahab, represented in an abstract way, and Moby himself. This is the gold doubloon that was offered to the first person on the ship who sights the whale. This shows the first day of the chase, the actual sighting of the whale, kind of, giving a feeling of being up in the crow's nest. This is the third and final day of the battle with the whale. And the epilogue, the great shroud of the sea rolled on as it rolled 5,000 years ago. Then I think the lighting is a little bit maybe too severe here, too much reflection. So the covers are made of wood. It has a secret Belgian binding, and it might be hard to see with the lighting, but I went online and just found all kinds of traditional symbols and runes and things like that, and I carved that into the wood with a Dremel. And my favorite thing in bookmaking is to marry the structure of the book with the content. So the next book that I have, and I'm going to see if I can, well, I guess I can hold it closer to the camera. It's a little in a TUI box, and it's based on a poem called Written in Pencil in the Sealed Railway Car. And it on the paper on the side is just some dark looking scenes. So when you take the cover off of the box, the sides fall open. And it has the pencil, and it reads, "Here in this carload, I am Eve, with Abel, my son. If you see my other son, Cain, son of man, tell him that I," and that's it. And then it just goes. Normally with this structure, the cover of the box would be separate. But what I discovered when I was making it is because of the way the writing is on the sides that fall open, that you need to have it in the right orientation when you open it. So, you know, if you look at the title on the cover, then and that's facing you in the correct way, then you'll open the box in the correct way. And then the third book that I'm going to show is a pop-up book. Oh God, that's my phone. Let me just go and hang that up. Sorry about that. Normally I would just mute myself. It's a Froglum. So in 2013, I saw a really funny newspaper story about a NASA photograph that was taken during a rocket launch. And in the foreground of the picture, you can see a frog that was thrown up from the ground up into the air by the force of the rocket ship taking off, but he obviously wasn't close enough to be incinerated. So, so I made a book about that. So the first thing is the actual NASA photograph, and I don't think you'll be able to see it on your screen, but right there in the middle of the cloud is where you can see the frog. And then the next part of the book is a copy of the newspaper article, which is absolutely hysterical. Houston, I think we have a Froglum. And the whole article is just really funny. And so I did a Turkish map fold because the article is, you know, the page is bigger than the size of my book. And then I did a pop-up, which I'll try to put so you can see it a little better, of the rocket ship and the frog. And then there was on NASA's website about this particular mission, there was actually a lot of information. It was a trip to the moon, you know, an unmanned trip. And so I copied the information from the NASA website and put it on this fold out thing, which is actually about 4 feet long, that, you know, just folds and unfolds into the pop-up page. And then I've never done anything like this before. I sat down and wrote the story from the frog's viewpoint. So in my story, the frog's trajectory and the rocket ship's trajectory intersect, and the frog ends up, he latches onto the rocket and slips in through a loose tile and ends up going off to the moon. And he's really excited because he thinks he'll be able to do some really high hops on the moon because of the lack of gravity. And there he is peering out of the windshield on the rocket ship. And then at the very back of the book, I have one of those, I guess it's called a French fold thing. I copied the press kit from the website and made a French fold, and that just fits in there. So that's it. Thank you.
Bravo.
Yeah, I was gonna have to turn my sound on for that. Very, very cool.
Oh, I love the sense of humor. Holy cow. That was a great laugh. I wanted to see the little explosion box. I wanted to see the images on the side.
Oh, okay. Let me put that camera back on. I need to switch back and forth
Or
between.
you can hold it up to the screen
Oh, right, yeah. Okay, will do.
and then just kind of turn it. Yeah, I just thought the side decorations could be really, they look like they were really quite beautiful.
My light source is kind of strong. Yeah, it's they're actually there was a book that we were able to scavenge. Somebody had taken the whole thing apart, and it was paintings of New York.
Hmm.
Oops. Yeah, just
Yeah, they really are lovely.
nighttime scenes, and I guess because it's a city at night, you know, it's very dark and foreboding looking, so it seemed to go with the subject.
Absolutely magnificent. They're little gems.
Thank you. Oh, and I have a website, boundobject.com, and it has a thing where page through, you know, it's like a slideshow thing. You can page through an entire book. And actually, when you're looking at the big page, if you click on your screen, it will actually get big to fill your screen. So a lot of the books you can actually read from the website if you want to read my frog story.
The other thing, I do want to read the frog story. The Moby Dick one, we couldn't see the bottom of the casket when the book was open. And I wondered if you could hold that up and
Okay.
so we could see the what you can.
Also, the view of the stitches on the spine would be nice too.
Oops. Yes. Let me see if I can
And
fix.
that's a Coptic bind?
No, it's the secret Belgian binding.
Okay.
So this
Does that would that be called a spook bind too?
what?
A spook binding? That was just a spy reference.
Oh. Yes.
Secret Belgium?
So this is the spine is a separate piece, which in this case is just a narrow piece of wood.
And that's a Heidi Kyle structure?
No.
Who did you learn your secret Belgian bind from?
Well, you can look it up on the internet to find out. How
Oh, okay. Okay, great.
and I think it was somebody, it was either somebody who lived in Belgium who designed it, or maybe it was the person who discovered it who was Belgian. And it's not really secret. Let me see if I can show.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
quite big. Okay. All right, now move you to the right for you. There we go. Oh, look at that.
So I had to do a lot of different things. I did, you know, there was Sculpey. I actually, what do you call it when you put ends of rope together? Spliced. I did some splicing of the rope that goes through the harpoon. You know, and then I had to do woodwork and all kinds of stuff for this project.
Amazing book.
Very nice.
Practically everything I do is a one-off.
Oh, yeah.
I did make 5 of the Frogland books, and I gave them for Christmas to people that I give gifts to.
Wow, I wish you loved me. God, I want one of those. That was really great.
Thank you. That was awesome.
Thank you.
Oh, man. Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
All right, so did we stop recording now?
We are going to continue recording for the whole thing. We never
I
stopped.
see. Very good. All right, so our last presenter is Laura Blacklow, and we're going to learn about her work. And I'm not sure actually how she's presenting today, but
If she needs a screen share, you need to let me know and I'll kick that right over.
I do need it. I have a PowerPoint also.
Okay, well, without further ado, let me,
Hi, Laura. Thank you for doing this today.
I actually want to thank you for asking me.
Oh, well,
let's see. Okay. I believe you are all set now to
Yeah.
share your own screen.
Can you see this?
did you go to the
Not
bottom?
yet.
Did you
Oh,
go?
I have to do, oh, yeah. I
Yeah.
forgot to do share screen.
Yes, you share your own screen.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I want to make this. Slideshow. Okay, I just, you have to excuse me for a minute because I had to give another presentation this week, and that's at the beginning of this. So I'm just going to go really quickly through my own photographs and prints and stuff like that. Okay.
All right.
So I'm going to have to quickly explain some of the photographic techniques I use to people who don't know them, but I want to answer during Q&A if you have questions. I just am trying to stay within the 15-minute limit, okay? So I may be going too fast. Tell me if I am and you need further explanation.
We
So
just don't have a screen share yet.
What? Are you
Does
serious?
anybody else have screen share?
I don't see screen share yet. No.
No, we're not seeing your screen yet.
I don't understand why.
Did you? There we
There
go.
we go.
Okay.
Terrific.
Oh, so you got to miss all the other stuff from the other presentation. That's good. All right. So this is a book I made in 1975. It was the first book I ever made. I call it Woman Book. And it's Japanese stab binding. It's 16 by 20. And I used a, oh, wait a minute. Why don't I make this full? Okay. Oh, now you're going to have to go through all this. All right. Okay. Can you see it okay now?
Yes.
Everybody see it?
Yes.
Yes?
It's beautiful.
Yes? Okay, good.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. So I studied painting for my undergraduate degree and was a self-taught photographer until I went to graduate school. And I discovered these unusual materials. This is a black and white emulsion. It comes in a bottle and you can coat it on practically anything. So originally, these were going to be family to hang on a wall. But then I noticed that the backs of the so-called fabric frames were pretty lively. And I decided to make my first book with hand coloring. I used oil paints and collage materials. And the only text in it is a quote from Diane Arbus. That's my photograph, though. Nothing is ever the way they said it was. It's what I've never seen before that I recognize. Oh my God, can you hear my cat? Oh God. That's the bat.
No, but we'd like to.
He's crying because I'm not paying attention to him.
Mine was doing that earlier.
Yeah. So this is a book I did after my mother died. I call it On Surviving. It's 10.5 by 12 inches. I used a whip stitch with it. and my photos were laid down on a glass platen, and I put rag paper through a photocopier, office photocopier, and then hand colored with pastel common. So it took me a long time to make, but the only other book that addressed surviving the death of someone you love was Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's On Death and Dying. But I meant this as a more personal book. And this is one of those things where I applied for just about every grant you can possibly imagine that actually would allow me to silkscreen print these and be able to give them out to social workers and people's in hospitals, so that you know, the social worker could maybe understand better how it felt. So I used my dreams, I used Kubler-Ross's research, and I used excerpts from my journals. And the book chronicles my recovery after my mother's death. I was young when she died. Or let me just put it this way, none of my friends had lost a parent. This is a transparent page. So I put vellum through a Xerox machine, and the book kind of, it goes forward. It starts out going backwards, and then it goes further backwards, and it comes up to the present. So this book I call The Disappeared. That's a linen case, and maybe you can see here, I didn't do this part. It has the title stamped. And in actual fact, when I finished it, I thought, wow, that case kind of looks like something you might find in a graveyard. So it's accordion folded, and it is made in about 7 chapters. I copied my black and white photos onto rag printmaking paper, and I ran it through an office copier, then hand colored it with pastel. So it chronicles the story, well, it briefly chronicles the story of the Mayan people who have been disappeared by murder, mistreatment, and poor living conditions in Guatemala, which is a place that I had visited often. So you see that the text is in English, Spanish, and if you see the plastic kind of over thingy here, that's Braille. So these are my own photographs. Are you getting, I'm getting something saying my internet connection is unstable. Are you getting that? Can you hear me okay?
Your voice is slows down a
Okay.
little bit here and there, but we're getting it more or less. Yes.
I am, Christina, I am sitting practically on top of the router. That's how bad my connection is in Cambridge. So Guatemalan Stories is 12 by 18 inches. It's Japanese side sewn, and the case is covered in hand woven Mayan fabric. I used a process called Van Dyke brown printing and Cyanotype, 2 antique photo processes, also known as sun printing. You may have seen those sun printing kits that you can get like at the Children's Museum when it was open. But I didn't use any photographic negatives. I used toy soldiers and press type on acetate. And I have been volunteering. No, how can that be? I have been volunteering in Central America for 2.5 decades, and been working. It's original. I love the people. The land is extraordinary, but it's probably one of the most corrupt and racist countries I've ever been to. The Maya are actually in the majority, but they're treated maybe like blacks were in the 1950s in the United States. So through my many trips to Central America, plus my membership in the Boston area Guatemala Solidarity Committee, I have met people who still are human rights fighters in Guatemala, which takes so much courage. And I interviewed them for this book. A Nightmare in Guatemala is a huge, well, big for me, 24 by 30 inch pages, accordion folded and hand colored book. Now, this is a digital print. That's how I can get that type in on the top. And I put, don't tell anybody, but I put Reeves Lightweight through an Epson printer. I always include a page that lists organizations that the viewer can support at the end, so they don't walk away feeling helpless. But this large book recounts an actual incident that happened to me. And Chantal, took Claudia Arnoff with me to Guatemala. She's a student from museum school.
So
And
cool.
I think that we prevented a disappearance from happening, because at 4 o'clock in the morning, we saw paramilitaries come and surround this house. And they waited for a payphone to ring. And then they answered it and they drew their guns. So hopefully all the dogs barking and noise that we made warned someone. Okay, so this one is called Disappearing Jungle, Vanishing Flora. It's 22.5 by 15 inches. It's cyanotype and Van Dyke Brown print pages. You can see there's a Coptic binding. And again, the Mayan women dye, weave, and on a backstrap loom and embroider these fabrics. And I use them on my covers because I love their work. Their patterns are never written down. It's all in their heads. And the program where I volunteer has sites in Guatemala City, the Guatemalan highlands, the rainforest, and across the border in Honduras. I made these cyanotype and Van Dyke Brown prints in the Petén jungle near Tikal. You might have heard of Tikal. It's a Mayan site that's over 500 years old. And the Maya used these plants for medicinal purposes, even as their land is sold off by the crooked government to both legal and illegal businesses. At the end of the book is all the text explaining what these flowers are and how the Maya use them in both English and Spanish. So they graze cattle, they tear down the forest, and McDonald's might graze cattle. The cocaine traders from South America come up, and when their airplane needs to be refueled, they cut down the forest and they have landing strips, and they, take off again for, of course, the United States. There is a group that calls themselves Combat Paper, and they take their old military uniforms and make paper out of it. So they asked me to do a piece of art. I did a book, and again, it's on Guatemala, and I just thought, well, gee, here's these uniforms, and I want to maybe explain about the 36-year civil war that ended in the 90s. and was greatly assisted by the United States businesses and military. So again, it's accordion folded, and I like accordion fold because when you want to exhibit it, nobody has to turn a page. They can see the book. Can you see that bumpy surface? That's one of my negatives, but it's so hard to print on. And on the right here, that's one of the pyramids that I was referring to in Tikal. So Confessions of a Jew is what I call a dry mount book. I can explain it later, but it's kind of a glorified accordion fold. And this is 6 3/4 by 5.5 inches, and it's inkjet prints on acid-free paper. Due to the current tensions in the Middle East and my background, I was moved to create an intimate book probing the relationship of personal history to public issues. I used my own photos and those from my family's album, plus the news media. So you see on my lips, sometimes I'm embarrassed for anyone to, some of the most influential modern figures were born Jewish, and it lists some of the contemporary famous people. Obviously, I skipped a lot of pages in there, but anyway, Uncovering Eden is 8 by 8 1/4 inches. And it too is digital prints that I kind of made more intense with marker pens. And it's the first in a series of pop-up books that I make in the winter when I can't do sun printing for adults. And it's from life's lessons that I hope I have learned. And the text says, in every Eden, there lurks a serpent. And then this summer, I've been making these little books, just ones of words that keep me going during this really, really tough time. And then my own images. So these are cyanotypes, blueprints. This is collaged cyanotype and blueprint plant forms on cyanotype and blueprint background. It's one of those things that I rarely do. It was a book that I was not happy with, and I actually collaged on top of it. And I was really surprised because usually you can't save something that you don't think was very successful. But I think this one turned out okay. So the words are out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing. There is a field. I'll meet you there. And these words come from a 13th century Sufi poet named Rumi. So I went to some Black Lives Matter uh, demonstrations. And even though I was really afraid of COVID, I kind of stayed in the background, but this poem is by a wonderful African-American poet. And that's it. So yeah, I think I can come out of.
Well done. Those are really beautiful.
Thank you, thank you.
I have to say, you have a way with cyanotype. And there was the Van Dyke. What did you call the Van Dyke?
Van Dyke brown printing.
Printing. I've never heard of that.
It uses silver nitrate as one of the chemicals, and you mix it up or buy it pre-mixed and coat it on just like a cyanotype onto paper or fabric, and place things on it that will block the sunlight. Some people use photographic negatives, and I use objects sometimes.
I find it really neat to see cyanotype in another color, and I like the way they are mixed.
That's what causes the color change, yeah. And it's a little bit unpredictable, and I like that, you know.
I think you work with that beautifully.
Gum dichromate is another technique that works in a similar way, that you can actually tint whatever color you want. And it's actually very similar. So all three of these techniques are kind of running parallel in how they're done and the kind of look that they generate.
Can you say the name of that one, Christina?
Gum, and then the word dichromate.
Which I just want to add a little side here, is that dichromate is very bad for the environment.
Yeah.
So I wrote a book on all these processes. It's in its 5th edition right now. And really I have got, step-by-step instructions, but I do repeatedly mention that you have to be so careful on how you get rid of the excess chemical that you wash off.
Yeah. What's the name of your book that
Oh, it's New Dimensions in Photo Processes. You get it at bookstores, Amazon, which I hate to mention, and any place. They'll special order it. And there's a French edition. What's that?
I said it covers a lot more than just these 3 techniques.
Oh, and it's made for people who might not be interested in photography and photo negatives. And it's also made for people who don't know anything about positives and negatives. So
lovely.
Yeah.
Laura, can I just say I took a class with you years ago in cyanotype, and I have your book.
Me.
It was amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. You emailed me, right?
I will, yes.
Yeah. That is so cool. And are you still doing it?
No, I worry so much about disposing everything.
Yeah. It's with cyanotypes, you can, if you have, like I live in Cambridge where there's a good municipal system for sewage. But if you don't have that and you have like groundwater that you're using, it's not good.
You can't.
Oh, you'll want to take that stuff to a dump, to your town dump, and they'll know how to dispose of it.
That's exactly what I did when I was in the rainforest. Is I went to restaurants and I got these huge containers that oil came in. And I would, instead of having a pipe underneath the sink, I would have these containers, and then I would lug the plastic vats to a municipal, as much as they have municipal, in dump, which was a limestone quarry in Guatemala.
Yeah, but here we have most of the dumps in our towns have that capacity to take this toxic stuff. But
there's also the possibility of any existing dark rooms who have OSHA waste systems that are, for collecting these things that they could use. But there's also the possibility of disgassing yourself. Ferrous cyanide is one of the ingredients in a cyanotype. So, I mean, that word should scare people a little bit. So you just have to be careful. But the traditional techniques are fantastic, and there's so many new ways to apply them with contemporary perspective on it all. And your book has been very helpful for me. I've been doing cyanotypes for about 25 years.
All right.
Love them.
I feel a little guilty.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
Laura, one of the things that I was thinking is that cyanotypes and also Van Dyke Brown, both techniques are so inherently beautiful that it's very difficult, I find, to make an original statement with them because the technique alone is so seductive. And I think you did a brilliant job in, these exquisite images that you've shown us, just breathtaking, honestly.
Thank
Oh,
you.
I would
That's
agree. And the little book that you took that was what you said was a discard and reworked it with collage, completely and utterly successful.
Yeah, I thank you. I really appreciate that. I actually just sold it as a fundraiser for the Photographic Resource Center.
Wow. Congratulations.
Yeah.
I wish I'd been at that auction.
Oh, it was online. Yeah, it was
Oh.
online. Yeah.
Wow.
I also wanted to make a couple of comments about Mary and Chantal's work. So Chantal, I'll start with you since you were the first one to speak. I thought that your project was really, really interesting. And from a historical standpoint, a huge service to the city of Watertown. The other thing that I thought, and someone else made the same observation, is that it's beautifully laid out. I love the way you did the different fonts, the different size fonts, the way you juxtapose the images, and also the element of surprise where it's not all perfectly chronological. So I thought, all of those things really worked well together. So I want to thank you for that. And Mary, I loved your books, and that the frog plum, that's a gem. What a great story, and what a great little response to it.
Oh my gosh, just precious.
Excellent, everyone.
Thank
Carolyn,
you
you want to
so
give us a little
much.
wind down before I hit the end?
Yes, so next month, our show and tell will be on February 11th. Right now, it's still Thursday at 2:00. We hopefully we'll have some new dates coming up.
Yes.
Next year, if you all answered the survey, I know Chantal and I did.
There were close to 40 respondents, and yes,
great.
I have a bunch of alternate days and times that I think are going to work for most people.
Good.
And also I have the good news, very good news to report that we've got some volunteers. A lot of them, I think most of them are interested in general as needed help. But I just wanted to put that out there because it's very, very exciting. We can use all the help we can get. So tonight, the survey closes at midnight. So please, if you haven't taken it, take it. And then tomorrow I will send out a MailChimp with the results and, detailed of all of the category, other people that made specific comments. I will put that all in there. So you'll get that tomorrow.
I'm going to end out our recording.